Thank you for tuning in to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast, where we discuss the latest news, rumors, and games of the NFL and college football. As always, I'm Jeremiah.
Hey, and I'm Anthony.
And we are back again, guys. It is episode 202, March 23rd. And we're here recording this around 8:30-ish on a lovely, well, I should say very foggy Thursday morning here in Northern California. But we have a lot to discuss today. And it looks like that we may be getting fewer commercials in NFL games. And I know that's something that I've been wanting to see. And, you know, every time I watch a football game, you know, once the opening kickoff happens, they go right to a commercial. And it's annoying.
Right.
We all know that. So it looks like that Roger Goodell has kind of saw that as a problem too. And he wants to improve the viewing experience. He wants to change the pace of play. And that's what he addressed in an email addressed to fans yesterday. So Goodell states that the NFL will make a series of changes that will help improve the flow and pace of the game. That includes fewer commercials, unnecessary disruptions to the game on the field. Pretty much kind of make the game a little bit faster.
Right.
So they wanted to kind of eliminate some scheduled television, you know, TV timeouts and all that.
Yep.
So if it's implemented or created, I can't even say implement. If it's created and founded.
This happens.
If it happens, then each break would be increased from 1 minute to 50 seconds to 2:20 to accumulate the new format. So I kind of like it, man. I really hope we get fewer commercials.
In one way, it kind of surprised me because you're going to like kind of go
in a way, because that's a lot of advertisers too. So.
Sure, and like the NFL is all about making money, right? And I don't think the NFL has come to a point where they need to necessarily like worry about getting too big. Because I remember Cuban a couple of years back was basically saying like, yeah, like the NFL is obviously super, super popular, but like this bubble could only go so big before it bursts. So I don't think they're at that point to where they're starting to realize that they're at full saturation yet, but like they're doing these things for like pace of the game, which is nice and everything else like that to try and make it. But I've never really heard that the pace of the game was a bad thing for the NFL. I've heard the NFL, you know, it's whole like you don't know where the catch is. And for the NFL, they're trying to make it not as violent of a game because you don't want people suing you left and right for concussions. But the whole pace of the game thing I've never really heard as like a complaint with the NFL. I've heard it with baseball. Baseball, that's kind of their biggest complaint is pace of the game. And with the NBA, the last 5 minutes of the game, last 2 minutes of the game where there's commercials and timeouts left and right. Like, that part of it I've heard. But with the NFL, like, the last 2 minutes of the game is one of the most fun parts of it when everything's happening like that. And throughout the game, I mean, yeah, there are a lot of commercials in the game, but that's never been anything I've heard of. And the other part of it that actually kind of is weird to me is, okay, yeah, like, you know, you have the games that are on, you know, if you live in where we're at in Northern California, you watch the Raiders, you watch the Niners, stuff like that. If you're in, you know, Texas, you're going to watch the Cowboys or something like that. Also, there's, you know, Red Zone, which kind of eliminates that whole commercial element of it, right? Like you just end up watching Quad Box at a certain point, and you're watching the dude basically talking about all the games that are going on. So commercials don't really matter in that point. It's like, all right, there's the kickoff. Cool. All right, now we're going to go over to Arizona to watch the Cardinals. Like they keep doing these things. So this stuff only matters if you're watching it locally, which I'm sure a lot of people still do. But that also doesn't happen when you have Red Zone. So, or even Sunday Ticket when you yourself could just kind of bounce back and forth to every other kind of game.
Yeah, a lot of people don't have Red Zone or Sunday Ticket, though. But alluding to the point of the pace of the game,
right?
I've never heard that as a problem either. It's something that the Major League Baseball has been trying to do. So I have heard that it is a problem in baseball to make the game a little bit faster because, you know, it's one of the slowest, you know, kind of like the slowest developing games in all of the 4 major sports leagues. But,
right.
You know, with them having fewer commercial breaks, that means we're going to have longer commercial breaks because, you know, you still got to fit those advertisers in there.
Yeah, right.
But, you know, I'm all for having fewer commercial breaks because, you know, this is for probably the guys that don't have, a red zone or
right.
They don't have Sunday ticket. Some people just don't have it. And, when you're watching a lot of these local games or games that are on cable, some people may have like one game available, and, it gets kind of annoying when you have a lot of commercial breaks.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I do get that part. Like that. Like, don't get me wrong. There's parts of it I get. It's just part of it. When I was hearing it, it's just I didn't know this was a thing, and I guess better to jump in front of it before it becomes a thing. But it was just kind of a shocking thing to a certain degree.
Yeah, and it's something that the NFL wants to do. So in addition to the potential changes,
right?
The league wants to propose additional changes to broadcast that center upon providing more quote-unquote compelling content, whatever that means.
But what does that mean? Like
exactly, that's what I said, whatever that means.
Changes to broadcast compelling content. Is that like you want them to get more like pop culture references? Is that like I don't really know what that means. Like, it's just kind of a weird thing where you want like compelling content. Like, yeah, fine, you don't want the guys to be boring. Like, you don't want to be like first down. Like, you don't want them to be like super droning and boring. But like, I don't know. The NFL is weird. Like, I don't know what you like. That's really vague and stuff like that. Like, yeah, of course you want your people to be entertaining, whatever else like that. But you also don't want them to be too entertaining, because then at that point you're basically giving them, the right or the free reign to do what they want to do, right? Because you're like, oh, you want compelling content? I'll do what I feel is compelling content. And that's when they had people in the booth like Tony Kornheiser for a second. They had Dennis Miller. You had people like that. You even had Jimmy Kimmel in there for a second, and he was trying to do his own thing, and they were kind of like not about what he was doing. So, yeah, compelling content, but I feel like that compelling content means compelling content that they feel is compelling content, right? Not stuff that like you or I might feel. It's stuff that they like, because they don't even like compelling stuff for like NFL players, right? Like if an NFL player says something too much, they kind of like rein them in. Like, nope, that's too far. We want you to just basically say like the cliches. Don't go too far. So I don't know exactly what the NFL is doing with this. That seems kind of weird.
Yeah, I don't know what that means. Compelling content. That is something that we will find out. But, there's also a lot of proposed changes, such as centralized replay review. And it will also have to be improved by NFL ownership. So we have a lot that might get improved this, early next week.
Yeah, and they're going to have a whole bunch of other stuff they're going to propose. They're going to do all the stuff that they feel is important. And they always have like a bunch of stuff they just kind of throw at the wall and see what sticks.
Okay, well, this is the outline that Roger Goodell had. This is the number of changes to. He wants to improve the mechanics and rules of the game. So one of them is that, clubs will have to vote on the change to centralized replay reviews, which I just kind of just stated.
Right.
So I'm going to skip over that one. And, regarding game timing, the NFL wants to institute a play clock following the extra point. So when the TV break happens, they want to consider instituting a play clock after the touchdown. So that's one that's a little bit kind of weird to me.
Mm-hmm.
I never heard a play clock after a touchdown.
Yeah,
I don't know. And they also want to standardize the starting of the clock after a runner goes out of bounds and standardize halftime lengths in all games, so the games could return to the action as quickly as possible. So, okay, that one's a little more reasonable.
Yeah, that's fine. You constricted like you get 10 minutes or something like that. Like, that's fine. Like, I get that. Yeah.
So those are some of the changes that the NFL wants to implement. So we might get fewer commercials, guys. I do think it's something that is going to happen. I think it's going to get voted on. I really do.
That I think has a good enough shot of anything else. I think that's the one of all these things. The whole like running the clock out of bounds, like I think that's just too much. Like you want to speed up the game, that's fine, but like I think you're cutting off your nose to spite your face when you do some things like that because you think something's a good idea and you're like, yeah, this is going to be great. We're going to totally speed up the game, but then there's chaos, right? Because you're going to have games that end super quick and something like that, and people aren't going to realize that because they ran out of bounds, okay, we got to start the clock up or something like that. People are going to lose games, and there's going to be so much chaos and yelling, which maybe the NFL doesn't care about because that gets some publicity. But like at the same time, like if you're going to do this, you have to kind of have everybody on board and just people don't know there's overtime, and that happens that you can tie after overtime. Like Jay Gruden last year was in like 2 press conferences where he was still just like, I didn't know we could tie. After he tied, afterwards he's like, I didn't know we could tie. Like you need to figure out these rules and make sure everybody knows.
Yeah, and before we take our first break, I just got to say that getting back to the potential change of the centralized replay review, instead of having a fixed sideline monitor,
right?
The league wants to bring in tablets to the referees so they can review the play and kind of like in consolidation with the official headquarters in New York. I can't even talk today, man. Can't even talk. So they want to add like a tablet, pretty much that is really to have consistent, accurate, calls that would speed up the process.
I mean, sure. Like that part I get. That part's not terrible, right? Kind of making technology a little bit better of a thing. I mean, if you really wanted to make technology a good thing, you could put some chips into the football to see, if the football hit the ground or how it hit the ground, like, or for as far as catches go, or, if it hit the pylon before your knee hit. Like, there's all these things you could do technology-wise with the NFL to figure this out, and I think they're starting to get to that level with the tablet or whatever. But, yeah, like, there's slow little things that you can do to keep making the game easier for fans to understand because, for being honest, like, we all understand how football works. You throw the ball, you catch the ball, touchdown, congratulations. But, like, as far as just, like, how the specific mechanics of it all works out and whether or not a lineman is holding him or whether or not it's pass interference or whether or not it's a catch, all those things are super muddled and super confusing. And that's probably one thing more than anything else they need to figure out. Just that way we can have, like, a clear – it's like, oh, cool, that was a catch, or nope. Instead of, like, watching it, just like, I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know what the referee's going to say. Oh, he said that's a catch? Sure.
And they actually had tablets in the NFL already with a lot of coaches.
Yeah, Bill Belichick slammed it down when he was mad one time.
Yeah, Belichick doesn't like it. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with all these proposed rule changes. So we will see. But we're going to take our first break here, and we're actually going to talk about another potential rule change that we actually discussed yesterday that was tweeted by Troy Vincent, and he did say that they want to have an instructional tackling video that is what's right and what's wrong. And, Martellus Bennett, who just signed with the Green Bay Packers, just has some comments about it.
I love him.
So we will talk about Bennett's comments on Troy Vincent's tweets when we get back to the Going to Me Concepts Football Podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Well, welcome back to Going to Me Concepts Football Podcast. And, yesterday, Anthony and I discussed Troy Vincent, who is the NFL Executive Vice President of Football Operations. He put out a series of tweets a couple days ago, about developing an educational video on, like, certain hits and what hits not to do, about disciplining players on vicious hits that can lead to ejections or suspensions.
Right.
So, one player in particular who is very outspoken, and he's been very outspoken for a while, and I love, sometimes I like how outspoken he is. He talked about his quarterback, who is Jay Cutler.
Mm-hmm.
He talked about his team when he was in Chicago, when E60 did a story on him and his brother, Michael.
Yep.
So, Martellus Bennett, I think he's a phenomenal tight end. He did sign with the Green Bay Packers.
Yes, he did.
But he didn't like the idea of the NFL telling him the right way to celebrate during the game, because that's another way that, the NFL wants to do too, is, they want to regulate celebrations.
Mm-hmm.
So, Martellus Bennett put out a series of tweets voicing his displeasure.
Not a fan.
He's not a fan at all. So this is one of the other one. Okay, so when talking about the educational video on celebrations, Martellus Bennett is like, yeah, an educational training video on celebrations. Spend that money on something else, like a video on investments or something. And then he went on, let the players express their individuality and creativity. Y'all going to make an educational video on how we talk next? And then goes on, he pulls out the GIF or GIF, however you want to call it, of Will Smith in his French Prince days dancing. And then the caption read, an educational video on appropriate celebrations, not signing up for that class. And then Martellus Bennett went on to criticize the league for not promoting its players like the NBA. He pretty much said, see, the NFL promotes the logos, not the players. The NBA promotes its players. Big difference. And then Martellus Bennett went on. NFL knows players won't be around long, so they invest all resources into the building team logos or for longevity. That's the constant variable. Except for the quarterback position. That's why they're the face of the franchise. NBA, on the other hand, they can invest in the players being the face of the entire league. Look at the advertising of both. Well, that was a lot of tweets that Martellus Bennett had talking about the league that he plays in. But you know what, though? To be fair, I kind of have to agree with him.
Well, he's not. Here's the thing. He's not
wrong.
He's not wrong, because the thing is, he's basically saying that the NFL doesn't promote its players because, they're not around as long except for the quarterbacks. Right. The reason why they're not around as long outside of the quarterbacks is because your job, Martellus Bennett, is to literally potentially run headfirst into your own brother while he's trying to basically take your head off. Right. Like, that is the rule of football. Get as many yards as you can colliding into other dudes. Like, that's the name of the game. And by doing that, it leads to players not having as long of a career. Like, running backs have a decade in the league. So it's hard to promote someone like Adrian Peterson or Ezekiel Elliott because they're only going to be around for, at best, a decade, if not shorter period of time. It could be a Terrell Davis situation where you get 3 years out of him, then all of a sudden he hurts himself and now he's gone. Quarterbacks generally last for a longer period of time. Tom Brady's been doing this since about 2000. Peyton Manning a little bit before that until he finally retired last year. Right, or 2 years ago. So those quarterbacks are able to do things longer, so that way they can promote someone like an Andrew Luck or a Ben Roethlisberger. Well, they never really did him, but Aaron Rodgers or Andrew Luck or Peyton Manning or Tom Brady or something like that. You're able to make them the stars, right? And that you can do that to where the NBA. Kobe played for 20 years. Dirk's playing for almost 20 years. Garnett played for over 20 years. You're going to have these people that are playing for a very long period of time because they're not getting injured, right? So that makes it easier for them to do. And, you can also criticize the NBA in certain ways because they basically tried to scrub fighting out of the NBA, right? Before Ron Artest made it his personal mission to become an MMA trainer to everybody in the crowd,
the malice at the palace.
100%. Like, before he and Steven Jackson basically decided to go full Street Fighter on everybody, you would fight in the NFL. It wasn't every time, but you watch fights with Kobe. When Kobe first got into the league, he threw hands with somebody. He fought somebody in the beginning. Rudy Tomjanovich, an old coach in the NBA, he played, and Kermit Washington basically broke his face. Dead serious, broke his face. People fought before that. Just Google Charles Oakley. Forget about what he did in the stands as a fan. Like, Google Charles Oakley and see the stuff he did. Like, people would fight in the NBA before Ron Artest did what he did. And ever since then, the league was basically just like, all right, man, like, we need to stop this. Like, we need to basically make this not a thing. And it even extended to the fact where, you know, you had people fined for even leaving the bench. In the NFL, like, you can't take the violence out of the game because it's a game of tackling. Like, you can't really take that out of it. But because it's so violent, you have to regulate these things. And by regulating them, you have to regulate things like, you know, who you can market. Like, you know, you can't market somebody who is a violent running back. You can't market somebody who is a slot receiver because, you know, Randy Moss was a guy that would run down the sideline and kind of go out of bounds as soon as someone came near him because he didn't want to get hurt. Wes Welker was with the Patriots for, you know, 5-6 years and did really well in that time frame. But, dude, that man can't, you know, put together a sentence now without sounding like his brain is all fried. Like, it's a hard thing. I'll give it to the NFL that it's a hard thing for them to do because you don't know how long your players can be good.
Yeah, and I think, to be fair, I think the reason why the NFL focuses so much on promoting the actual brand is, you know, we have all this talk about CTE.
Right.
You know, all these injuries and all that. So they want, you know, kids to still play the game because that's basically the future of the league.
Right.
You know, they don't want kids, teenagers to stop playing football because of what they hear of these scientific studies. So, to be fair, I can see why they do so much for the brand. And, you know, Raj Goodell, we can criticize him for many things, but the one thing I will never criticize him on is how well what he has done for the brand of the NFL. He's done so much for the brand.
Has he?
I think he has.
Because Tagliabue, you could say a lot. He did a lot for the brand.
He did a lot too.
Like, with Goodell, like, the problem with him is, like, yeah, don't get me wrong, like, financially, the NFL has grown leaps and bounds over the last 10, 15 years. Yeah, totally 100% agree with that. But the thing with the NFL is they've also become super corporatized, which I'm not saying they weren't before that, but I think it's so much more obvious now that the league has become so much of a corporation, right? As far as the sense of just like it's a factory line, and people are starting to realize that now. Now, don't get me wrong, like, go to Texas and go watch high school football. Like, that's not going to stop.
No.
You know, no matter how corporatized you make it, like, that part's not going to stop. They're still going to make that thing into basically, you know, a major sport of their own for stuff like that. Like, fine. But I think people around the NFL, like, it's waves just, you know, lapsing on a shore, slowly eroding the, you know, beach itself. Like, slowly the stuff kind of like the wave hits and it slowly erodes it like that. Like, I think you keep hearing all these things with the NFL, whether it's CTE or whether it's the fact that they had to, like, have the military pay them to be a part of it. Like, you hear all these things over and over and over again, and it's just kind of things where it's just like, you know, death by 1,000 cuts. Eventually it's just like, all right, man, like, I get it. I still like and I still like the NFL a lot. I also watch the NFL all the time, so I guess I'm kind of a hypocrite in that aspect. But at the same time, I'm like, oh, no, you guys are super shady. You know, it's like I can also love the sport, but also know, like, oh, no, this is super shady. It can be both things.
Yeah, and the reason why I say that, you know, the brand has done so well under Goodell's time is, you know, football continues to be popular. I don't know when that's going to change. I still think it is the most popular sport in the league.
Yeah.
Not in the league. That doesn't make any sense.
In America.
In America.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Yeah.
But to a point, getting back to Martellus Bennett's comments here, I have to agree that the NBA does so much better job of promoting its actual players.
But they're the only ones that really do, though.
Yeah, they which is true. You know, you don't see that in Major League Baseball. You don't see that in the NHL. They don't really market their drafts very well like the NBA and the NFL does.
Right.
So, and it's crazy because, you know, the NFL draft gets a lot more ratings than some sporting events in America, and I think that's crazy to me.
Well, the NFL Pro Bowl get a lot of better ratings
Exactly.
than a lot of things in America.
Yeah.
But, well, no, like, where's the other part of it that, you know, has to do with the NFL compared to basketball? Okay, basketball. What's the dress code? Not dress code. What's the uniform for the NBA?
It is basically a jersey.
Jersey, shorts, shoes.
That's it, yeah.
And the shoes are totally whatever you want. Like, you can wear whatever shoes you want to wear in the NBA, right? They don't care as much about that.
Yeah, a lot of players wear their own brand shoes, too.
Right.
So,
yeah. NFL, you've got all the padding. Also, you have a helmet. And you can't see who these people are. Like, we know who Peyton Manning is because he did all those DirecTV commercials or whatever. We knew who he was. We knew Tom Brady because he's been doing it for about 15 years. People have helmets on. Like, they're basically like the modern-day gladiators, right? I mean, they're Power Rangers, for lack of a better term, right?
Speaking of Power Rangers.
Like, the movie, like the Power Rangers movie's coming out, right? So, like, I want to see it. You want to see it. A lot of people want to see it. By the way, if you watch the old TV show of the Power Rangers, woo! That is not what you thought it was when you were 5, 6, 7 years old. When you watch it, so much cheesier. God. But go watch it. There's like 60 episodes on season 1. It's interesting. It's a lot of stuff, but... yeah, I mean, they're basically modern versions of Gladiators or Power Rangers or Ninja Turtles or what. Like, they're basically like people who are just like fighting all the time.
They're superheroes.
Yeah, they're superheroes in that aspect, right? So, superheroes don't last for a long time. Like, you can be like a great defensive player, and if you all of a sudden hit somebody wrong and hurt your neck, bam, gone. If you are a, offensive lineman and someone hits you the wrong way and you twist your knee, done. So all these things can happen, and that's why the NFL can't promote their players.
Yeah, and to the point, I do kind of see that reason why they don't. And I did point out the reason why they advertise the brand so heavily is because of all the negativity surrounding the league. We had a lot of players that were involved in a lot of domestic violence,
right.
Sexual assault. We have the Colin Kaepernick saga that went on this entire year that had a lot of negative publicity towards, half of America. That pretty much torn half America apart. But, that is true. We don't see what these guys look like. They can be the ugliest man ever, and they can be probably the best player on that field.
Sure.
So, in football, you don't have to be the prettiest person. Basketball is a little different because, people technically see what you look like when you play.
Right.
So, to a point, I do see the reason why the NFL does do that. But getting back to Martellus Bennett's comments here, I kind of agree that an educational video on celebrations is kind of a waste of time. If I'm a player, I wouldn't even want to do that either.
Right.
So, but we're gonna have to see how the celebrations and how these, the proposed rule changes of like discipline on like certain hits and all that. We have a lot to get, talk about next week after the league meeting. So it's going to be a lot to handle. But when we get back, we're going to talk about a report that Sean Payton, the coach for the New Orleans Saints, has been speaking with Johnny Manziel.
That should go well.
So it looks like Johnny Football may be going to the Big Easy. So we will discuss that when we get back to Guns to Me Concepts Football Podcast.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
And welcome back to Going to Me Concepts Football Podcast. Well, like I said before the break, looks like Sean Payton, the head coach of the New Orleans Saints, has been speaking with Johnny Manziel. So, Johnny Football could head to the Big Easy and could back up Drew Brees. And honestly, I kind of like the idea of having Johnny Manziel being a backup to Drew Brees.
No, it's a good thing. You need him to be a backup, right? You can't have him be your number one guy, right? He needs to be the backup just to, like, calm him down, man. Because, like, how do we get acquainted with Johnny Manziel, right? We got acquainted with Johnny Manziel because he was Johnny Football over at Texas A&M. He was winning the Heisman, winning games, everything else like that. But the dude was also a party animal, man. Like, he was out there partying with Drake. Like, Drake was literally his boy in some of these photos and stuff like that. And, like, it got to a certain point where it was just like, yeah, cool. Like, if you want to be a song on Drake's new album, whatever else like that part's fine. But, like, also you need to do football stuff, and he couldn't balance both of them, right? Because we've seen people do both things, right? Deion Sanders probably the most notorious of all of them. But we've seen people do both things. But you can't be on Drake's new album, and you can't also be an NFL football player, being a quarterback. Those two things don't mesh, right? Like, it's one of those things where, I mean, hell, we just talked about football players and all this stuff and how they're like superheroes, right? I mean, like, you can be a Power Ranger, you can be Logan, right? You can be an X-Men, stuff like that. You can mix in all these other things, right? But at the end of the day, if you're not actually committed to football and you're not doing these things like that, I mean, you're going to be like a fish out of water kind of thing, right? Like, because everyone else is so focused and ingrained and wanting to be what they want. Like, it's a total 100% commitment with NFL players, right? That's what you hear all the time, how it's just something where even when they're not doing football things or thinking about football or they're trying to get better at football. Peyton Manning was notorious about basically like studying his brains out every single time, you know, in film room, trying to make sure he knew everything else like that. So now all of a sudden, if you're not that guy, if you're just coming in there and doing all these other things, I mean, you're kind of an outsider, right? Like, you're just someone from the outside coming in, you know, you're kind of like that dude from Get Out. Like, you're just someone who's trying to, like, get acclimated to this whole thing, but you totally don't know what else is going on. You're totally a different dude. You're totally separated. And for Manziel, it got to him at a certain point, and he had to stop because he was so bad in one of these games, right? Like, he was such a, like, disaster in one of the games. So him being a backup, that part is going to be fine for him because it's going to be like, here's Drew Brees. You know Drew Brees. He's great. Watch him. Do what he does. Like, forget everything else. Forget about Drake. Forget about partying. Watch him. Just stay there. Watch him. Do that. Don't watch March Madness. Don't watch any of March Madness. Just watch football games. Just stay there. Stay in your lane. And if he can do that, it'll be great for him because then he'll like slowly get back. Then we'll love him a little bit more because now he'll be contrite. Now he won't be yelling all the time about like partying and everything else like that. And it could work. And it could be great. And this is actually a solid first step.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, I like the idea of him going to New Orleans. But, you know, talking to Johnny Manziel, being interested in him, way different than signing him. Two different things. But I just visualize Johnny Manziel being in New Orleans.
That's the other part.
Which is a city.
That's the bad part.
It's a city, and it's a city where you can legally drink in public.
Yes. Yes.
And I have a really good friend that grew up there. He actually moved to L.A.
right
after Katrina.
Uh-huh.
But, yeah, that's one of the main things that really got him excited when he returned. But still, this is a city where you can legally drink in public.
Yeah. No, it's madness. And it's 100%. Yeah.
And it's not. The city never really technically sleeps.
No, it is. Yeah. But see, and totally 100% understand that part. Because it's one of those things of like, oh, you can put that's like putting Manziel. Because like I said, I think I've told you this. I have a theory that there's 5 cities in America that are basically separate countries, and I'm not talking about like, you know, Helena, Montana, where it's like a small city and whatever else like that. No. There's 5 cities in America that are basically separate countries. One is Hollywood. One is New York City, Manhattan-ish, I guess you could say. One is Miami. One is Las Vegas. And one is New Orleans. All 5 of those cities are basically different countries because once you go there, it's totally different than even something like Austin or the Bay Area or something like that. Things that are big cities, Boston, things that are big cities, but it's not that, man. Hollywood is just a different country because all the celebrities, New York because of all the just everything in New York.
Well, you know, there was a movie this past year, La La Land.
Right.
Which is basically about, you know, Hollywood.
Which Hollywood loved. Yeah. But there's all these, like, there's so many things like Miami because I mean it's basically a separate country. Forget about the fact that it's like 30 miles off of Cuba. Like it's a totally different country there. New Orleans because all the drinking that you can do there, and Las Vegas because all the gambling you can do there. Like all these cities have different things. And don't put Manziel in any of these cities. Don't put him with the Raiders, with that new Vegas team. Don't put him with the Rams. Don't put him with the Jets actually play in New Jersey, but still, don't put him with the Jets. And don't put him on the Dolphins. Like, all these things, New Orleans is probably not the best place to put him, but I'm at least saying it's good if he decides to just be the backup and go behind Drew Brees and just be like, I'm going to follow you and whatever you want me to do, I got you. But, it would be better if he was in Green Bay to back up Aaron Rodgers. Probably, because, again, you're backing up a really great quarterback who you're never going to beat out for the starting job, and it's Green Bay. It's not any kind of a city where you're going to get yourself in trouble to the same scale as New Orleans. But I do at least like this in one aspect of him knowing he's never going to be the starter, right? It's one thing, because if you put him in, like, Minnesota, don't do that, because then he could probably be the starter if Sam Bradford has a few bad games, or if Bradford gets hurt. You don't want that. New Orleans, he's not going to be the guy, and he can literally just chill for a year, and I think that's probably the best thing for him.
Yeah, I kind of like the idea of him learning from Drew Brees. He can learn so much from Drew Brees as well. Actually, a team that I would love to see him in will actually be Seattle to be a backup for Russell Wilson. Because technically, you don't really have to change your offense.
Right.
Technically, they're basically almost the same height, almost. So I kind of like that idea. Once Russell Wilson goes down, who is probably the franchise quarterback, I don't see them, moving on for him anytime soon, unless he has a really major career injury.
Sure, yeah.
I like the idea of having Johnny Manziel as the backup for Seattle because, you don't have to change your offense at all. You can run practically the same thing.
Right, that's not bad. Yeah. Or even, hold on, never mind. I take it back.
What?
I take it back.
What?
I was going to
say, take it back.
I was going to
say, well,
because we were thinking of a team that could help his skill set, right? But I was thinking of a team that he wouldn't be the backup in.
What team was that?
That would be Yo Niners.
The Niners? No, the reason why I can't see that is because...
You don't think Shanahan could help him out?
No, well, okay, Kyle Shanahan, when he was in Cleveland, I think 2014, that was the year when Johnny Manziel was there. Kyle Shanahan didn't even want Manziel there.
I guess there's that too.
So he wanted Brian Hoyer as the starter, and he was the starter.
Yeah, I guess that is true.
So I don't see that working out because Brian Hoyer is set to be the starter there, to be the bridge guy. So, yeah, I don't see that happening. That actually be pretty cool, but they won't win many games. But I think a team like Seattle would be a perfect fit for him. It'd actually be a perfect fit for Colin Kaepernick too, but who knows when he'll get signed.
Yeah.
But before we leave, I just got to ask this.
Yep.
Who do you think will get signed first? Johnny Manziel or Colin Kaepernick?
Manziel.
Think so? Yeah. I have to agree with you on that too. Johnny Manziel has a lot of baggage and all that, but, we kind of seen him. But his baggage is fixable. He was doing drugs and all that, doing all this alcohol and all that. You can get better from that. You know what Colin Kaepernick did? He kind of torn like half America apart, if you think about it. So that is a lot of baggage that Kaepernick has had. And, he's not as good what he used to be. And, John Manziel wasn't never a top tier.
But that last part I can argue with saying Kaepernick's not as good as he used to be. Okay, but that team he had last year was
really bad. Man. It was really bad. And I think Colin Kaepernick is good enough to be a backup. The fact that Josh McCown got signed before Kaepernick,
Colin Kaepernick can be good enough to be a starter depending on the team.
I think he can. I think Jim Harbaugh said he can still be.
Well, Harbaugh loves him. Yeah, Harbaugh loves him like a child. Like he basically told Alex Smith go away. For Kaepernick. So I mean, yeah.
So imagine if Jim Harbaugh never left, and what all the dysfunctional never happened with the 49ers. Colin Kaepernick would have had more confidence. But anyways, I don't know when Johnny Manziel would get signed, but I do think he will be on a team this preseason. I don't know if he'll be on the roster when the regular season comes out.
Right.
But he will get a chance.
Yeah.
Because, he's 24.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
But I also want to talk about something else, Anthony. You dropped a Power Rangers reference.
I did.
And there's a new movie coming out.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking about, during one of the commercial breaks, how the one in 94... how cheesy it is.
Oh, it's all all of the cheese.
It's very oozy, I should say. Terrible pun there.
There's been some movies that have been like there's some shows you watch, like Power Rangers, like the movie, where I was like, 5 years old or something like that when it came out, and I was like, oh, this is gonna be great, and I loved it. And then I watched some YouTube clips of it. I'm like, oh no, like it's so much worse.
Yeah,
like it's one of those things where it's just like I didn't know this was this bad. Like, yeah, like even the TV show, I was just like, oh, that's really bad too. Like you know how you say like never meet your heroes kind of thing like that. Never watch old TV shows you watched when you were a kid. It's not going to get any better for you. Like maybe some things will, like The Sandlot or something like that. But I mean, like for the most part, if you really liked it when you were a kid, just leave it as it was fun when you were a kid.
Speaking of The Sandlot, I was watching it a couple years ago, and I was thinking, with the way that the world is right now, I remember there was a part in that movie. It was one of the most infamous parts there. The one when one of the kids says, "You play ball like a girl."
Yeah.
That would not sit well in today's society.
No, but that was also referencing stuff from like the 60s.
Yeah,
right?
that is true. So
yeah, but no, if you said that today,
no, that movie drove so much criticism.
Oh,
so
yeah.
It's crazy how movies are back then. It seems like when the Power Rangers movie in '94 came out, it seems like it was so simpler. Times were so simpler. Maybe that's because we were younger, Anthony.
Yeah.
But I remember when the original series happened to got added on Netflix a couple years ago. I think like around 2012. I don't remember.
Right.
My gosh, I felt like I watched the first episode and I'm like, man, I kind of want my 22 minutes back.
Like I said, you watch it for nostalgia purposes. Don't watch it because you want to be entertained. That's not how this goes.
No, you know what though? Speaking of nostalgia purposes, I remember when like Nickelodeon brought back some of their old '90s shows on a separate channel. I still enjoy watching Kenan and Kel.
I
still do.
Yeah, some things that are funny are going to be funny like that. Goosebumps. Are You Afraid of the Dark? Things like that. Not the same.
Dude, I was watching Goosebumps.
Yeah, Goosebumps not as scary when you're 25 years old. Not the same thing. Not the same.
No, I was watching it. It was on Netflix, actually.
Yeah.
And there's an episode with Ryan Gosling on there. I was like, the hell? Ryan Gosling's on this?
I mean, the show was popular, and he was part of the Mickey Mouse Club probably back in the day. Yeah.
So I was like, oh, man, I didn't know that. And Are You Afraid of Dark? Yeah. I'm not going to lie. That show used to scare me. It doesn't scare me anymore.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't scare me like the new movie It. I guess apparently.
Oh, that one's going to be bad.
I guess apparently the trailer scared everybody in the theater, but I haven't seen it yet.
I haven't either, but that movie's going to be scary. That movie's going to be bad. People are going to be freaked out probably by that.
Yeah, I'm not watching that.
I will.
No, I know you will. No, man. No. All right, we're going to get going now. Enough for talking about movies and football here. I'd like to thank you guys for tuning in. We will return tomorrow. Hopefully. I'm kidding. No, we'll be here. I'm just kidding. No, we'll be here. We'll talk about any type of news that happens over the next 24 hours. And as always, I'm Jeremiah.
And I'm Anthony.
And I'd like to thank you guys for tuning into the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. You guys have a great day.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.